All right, so I'm going to wait a few minutes for people to jump in, and then we'll get started on our Mortgage Broker Mastery webinar. I'm going to set my timer here so that I respect everyone's time. I get excited about this topic, about talking about opening a mortgage brokerage, becoming a mortgage broker. So I want to make sure I leave enough time in case anyone has questions. So I'm just going to wait for about another 60 seconds and then we'll get started. All right. About another 30 seconds and then we'll get moving and starting to talk about all things mortgage brokerage. I'm going to apologize to everyone for my screen. I bought this huge, long, like one of those giant screens. And it's wonderful because I don't have 3 screens, but it does not allow me to go into presenter mode here. So you're going to see the slides on the left, but besides seeing those, everything should be the same. So, all right, we're going to get started here. So if you have jumped into this webinar for the next 45 minutes, we're going to be going through what this webinar called Mortgage Broker Mastery. And you'll see underneath there, from fired to financial freedom as a mortgage broker owner, from fired to choice freedom as a mortgage broker owner. I'll share a little bit about my story becoming a mortgage broker owner, which was not what I intended to do. So if any of you have some fears or doubts, or you're just unsure about if it's the right move for you, I can relate to that, and I will share a little bit more about that. So I'm Megan Marsh. I'm a 20-year veteran in the real estate and finance industry. What I'm a beast at is growing businesses and generating revenue within those businesses. I've opened and run a number of different businesses, from title companies to processing companies. I've opened mortgage brokerages 4 different times. And now I used to originate, and now I've shifted over and I help loan officers and real estate agents with their businesses. And I fell in love with the mortgage industry when I got into it. I didn't even want to do it at first either, but I fell in love with it. And then about 4 years ago was when I made the shift over into helping other people in the industry. I feel like great people want to be challenged. So if you're up for a challenge and you're willing to do what it takes to keep moving forward, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of the information that I'm going to share today. This is myself, and then this is my business partner, Andre Munar, part of the engine that got all of the things you're going to learn today going. And a couple things that I wanted to talk about before digging into the specific mortgage broker questions is just, first of all, how much the real estate and mortgage industry is changing right now. I think we all feel it. We don't necessarily understand everything that's going on, but we know that there's things that are changing where we work, how we work, the value we provide to customers, to the other professionals that we work with. So if exploring your options is something that you are looking at doing and you think there's a better way, there is a better way. And, I will show you some of the ways that I found. I also like to say, I don't think there's anything wrong or right about working retail, broker, bank. There is no best. There's no best even mortgage brokerage, for example. There's only what's best for you. So if the information that I'm going to go over today, hopefully it helps you get your wheels turning and it helps you start moving forward and doing things that protect you, your family, your career. So one of the biggest things, gosh, you can see it if you go into LinkedIn, there's all, there's scary posts, good posts, but the biggest thing that I tell everyone who is at our company is that every single person, every loan officer can sink or swim. It's their choice. But the biggest thing in our industry, I find, especially as loan officers, is that we do a lot of jumping. When one place doesn't work and we go to somewhere else and then somewhere else, right? We do this jumping. And the nice part about becoming a mortgage broker owner is you really start to be seen more as that community leader and not just somebody who's jumping from all these companies. We're also going to be talking about here, how can you control all of your commissions and decide what that money goes towards. That was one of the most powerful things for me when I owned my own brokerage. How can you feel good about how you're helping people as a broker? And then how can you make a bigger impact in your local market? So the information in here, it's for any loan officers who want to understand more about what it looks like to start to open a mortgage brokerage. And it's for anyone too who's maybe sick and tired of being promised support, technology, great rates, programs by someone, and then getting frustrated or burnt out because there's not follow through on what you've been told was supposed to be there. So I tell a lot of people who think about this, it's time to bet on yourself, right? It's time for a new mindset in our industry. I have a great story I'm going to share with you. Andre and myself, and actually we have a pretty deep team of people who have been mortgage brokers for a very long time. We've also been on the other side. We've worked at retail lenders, we've worked at banks before, but the majority of our career has been in the broker channel, and more than half of it now has been as owners of different mortgage companies. And just to kind of give you an idea, especially in the last few years, we're very involved in the industry with industry organizations. I am the state captain for Pennsylvania. We've got a couple of state captains here at our head location, corporate location, I guess you'd call it. And we've just had a lot of success, which I never thought we'd have this type of recognition. I thought I would receive awards when I was originating and closing 300 loans myself, which is crazy, not when I stepped back from originating. So I think that there's a lot that the industry is looking for, and there's a lot of room for other people to really, make their mark in this industry. Here are some of the questions we're going to be going over as we dig into the information today. So I'm going to be answering and really showing you some information on how much does it cost to start a mortgage brokerage? How much can you make owning a mortgage brokerage? What does it look like to run a mortgage brokerage as that broker owner? How do you make sure you're compliant? What are some of the biggest pitfalls of owning a brokerage? Where can you, trip up or make mistakes? And we can tell you about lots of those things. And where are some of the resources out there to help you when you start going on this journey? So if you have your phones, emails, and you want to put those on quiet mode or pause for the next 30 minutes as we dig in, I'm going to share, like I said, a little bit more about how I got into owning a mortgage brokerage, and then we'll go through the questions. So one of the biggest things, what are the options you have with your mortgage career and as a mortgage broker? There's a lot, I get a lot of questions from people. I talk to a lot of loan officers, and I hear a lot of questions that they've been told that aren't necessarily the truth. I don't think everyone knows all the answers. That's something I've learned. Part of our business structure back 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, oh, you can't do that. That's not compliant. That's not this. That's not that. There are a lot of people, even people in our industry, they don't truly know what you're allowed to do, not allowed to do, until you start really working with experts and paying for legal help and, financial help. That's when you start getting the correct answers. And that's very expensive. So we've done all of that, and it's why some of the support things that we have were built around so people don't have to do double the work. So just make sure you're getting your information from the right people. I'm going to talk just for a little bit during the presentation about our industry and how we approach our career planning. I think we live in the moment of what we do as loan originators, but we don't look at it holistically of where we want to go by the end of our careers. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. All right, so we'll get to some fun stuff. So how did I become a mortgage broker owner, which was really where it started for me? So like I said, I became a loan officer kicking and screaming, and I never thought about starting my own mortgage brokerage. I was an accountant by trade. I actually worked in New York City at Ernst & Young. And when I moved to Pennsylvania, where I live now with my family, I have 4 kids and a husband who is in the industry as well. I was just really didn't like my job that I was doing as a accountant. And it was my husband and his family that said, hey, you like numbers? You should try being a loan officer. And I'm like, oh, that's too risky. You know, I don't want to be commission based. So I went over and took an operational job at a mortgage company. And within 6 to 9 months after watching loan officers, I was yearning to try to do what they were doing, but I was too scared to do it. I was afraid, and my husband literally showed up at the office, and I used to be embarrassed to say some of the things that you're going to hear right now, but I'm not anymore, because I think we all have fears and things that hold us back from moving forward. And seeing the other side and the outcome hopefully will help some of you moving forward. So like I said, I didn't want to go fully commission, and my husband came into the office and he pretty much went to the owner and said, she's going to go commission based. She's going to become a full-time LO, and she's going to do it in the next 30 days. And that was how I started and became a loan officer. Excuse me. And this was I live in what's called the snow belt. So we don't sell a lot of real estate in January and February. So I got into the industry and I really started having a lot of success. These are some pictures with real estate agents I work with. And I worked, this was in 2005, and I worked at a brokerage my first 8 years in the industry. And something interesting that happened was I became the top producer at this company, but I hit a ceiling. I hit a ceiling because they didn't do marketing. I wasn't allowed to hire an assistant. I couldn't change any of the processes. I was getting paid very low basis points. And so I hit a ceiling when I was closing about 150 loans a month. And I couldn't really do any more. And I was stressed out. I was definitely, getting anxious. And so I took a step back, and my production went down, and I had what I call my Jerry Maguire moment. And so who's coming with me here? My Jerry Maguire moment was I walked into the office, and the owner of the company thought that my pipeline was going down because I was starting my own business, and I wasn't. I hadn't filed an LLC. I'd done nothing. I was not prepared. And so I was asked to leave the building, and had 2 people walk out with me, totally unprepared for this moment. And I'm out in the parking lot with 2 people thinking, what the heck am I going to do now? And I knew I didn't want to work for someone else again. I wanted to be able to make changes for my loan officers, for my clients. And so I partnered up, and that was in 2013. I started my first mortgage brokerage. And the amazing thing that happened was that within 1 year, I went from closing 150 loans to 175 to 200 to 250. And it just kept going until my peak year when I closed 300 loans in 2017 or 18. And so I didn't know that owning a brokerage was what I needed. And I wasn't probably that good at it. I didn't even know that you were supposed to have compliance. We didn't have the processes like we have now. We didn't have the team. And that brokerage didn't even end up being where I stayed. I didn't have the right business partner either. So I made a lot of mistakes. But it led me to where I am today, which is with, oh, I meant to bring all those up here, but which led me to today, which is I'm with the right business partner. I'm at the right company. I have the right team surrounding me. We do the right things. We have systems. We're doing everything correct. And in a market that's really, really difficult, we are profitable. We are succeeding. We're helping other people. And so a lot of opening your own mortgage brokerage is really finding what's best for you and being able to have the control to create what's best for you. And the hard part about that, I'm sure for any of you that are on here, is that, no one really tells us about how to do any of this stuff. They tell us how to originate loans. They, teach us how to go get more business or a different product, but nobody talks about the back end stuff or how to be, or, how to organize this stuff or how to have your time management about how you do all of these things. And not only that, no one really ever talked to me about my career as a whole. Like, we all make goals every year for what we're going to originate this year or next year, what kind of money we want to bring home to our families, but we never take the time to sit there and say, okay, I want to go from closing 6 loans a month to 10. I want to go from 10 to 20. I want to maybe own a business one day. I want to one day not be originating at all and have a company that supports me being able to do that. I want to add and have another business that provides another stream of income. We don't sit there and talk about these things, which is a really important part. And in other careers, you do that. You know what you're working towards, you know what you're heading for. And there's just not a lot of that information or discussion in our industry. So it's one of the things that we talk about at CoLab with our people, with anyone who's in our community, is really making sure we put plans together, because when you start putting plans on paper and putting them into action, they start happening. And I think one of the things that, surprised me the most, and the reason for this, and this is the slide here, this is one of my favorite stories. Because of these false narratives, because of the conversations we don't have, I think there's a lot of backwards thinking, and our industry needs to do what's called, I like to call it, breaking the belief barrier. So if you've ever heard of Roger Bannister, or if you haven't, write it down, go look it up after the webinar. It's one of my favorite stories. And Roger Bannister was a runner. He went to the Olympics and he ran the mile race. That was his main race. And this was back in the 1950s. And when he ran, no one had ever broken the 4-minute mile. And you can look, I think before, it was like 15, almost 20 years that, somebody had gotten to 4:15, maybe even down to 4:05, but no one had ever broken a 4-minute mile. And they started doing studies that it's humanly impossible to break a 4-minute mile. And it was, they had all this propaganda about how no human being will ever be able to break a 4-minute mile. And Roger Bannister, he didn't do it in the Olympics, but shortly after the Olympics, he ignored what everybody was saying. And he's like, all right, all he focused on is, I'm going to break this 4-minute mile. And he ended up, it was in 1952, in a certain race, he broke the 4-minute mark. It was 3:58 or 3:59. In 1952, he broke the 4-minute mile. And the amazing part of the story is that the same year, it probably was even a month or 3 months after, another person broke the 4-minute mile, and then another person and another person and another person, because he broke the belief barrier that was out there that you couldn't break a 4-minute mile. And I feel like that's a lot of what's happening in our industry right now, is everyone's told, you don't want to own your own business. You don't want to have that responsibility, or it's too much work. It's too much risk. It doesn't do this or that. There's this belief that's been around in our industry after 2008 that, loan officers should not want to own their own business, where I believe if you have a very strong book of business, even if you don't have a huge book of business, there still are so many benefits to you and your family and your team that it is worth doing it. And there are resources now. So, You know, when I talk to loan officers, like one I talked to a few weeks ago who built $1 billion region at a company that he had no ownership in, when he had to step away, he has nothing. And when you own a brokerage, you will walk away with something. You will have value and equity that you can pass on, sell. And there's a lot of value in that. Instead of getting a check now, which is pennies on the dollar, you create a self-sustaining business that is worth something in the long term. All right. So that's story time. Let's dig into these questions I know that all of you are interested in. So regardless of what you've been told, what opportunities you've missed maybe in the past, you know, taking action now can change everything. And so the first question that we're going to start digging into here is, we're going to go through first, what are the licensing and regulatory requirements to become a mortgage broker? And a lot of the questions that we're going to go through, this is, like I said, a 45-50-minute webinar. I can't dig too far in. We do have a little bit more of a complex industry, and there's never been courses or trainings around how you do this stuff, right? And it was one of the reasons why in 2019, when we opened our brokerage again, after trying retail, we're like, okay, we need to do something. And we did. We ended up creating a course for loan officers called Mortgage Broker Fast Track that helps open and run a profitable mortgage brokerage. But it led to a lot of other things that we realized that loan officers needed. And the requirements for licensing are one of those things. You don't have to take an additional test to become a mortgage broker as long as you've already done your 20 hours and you've passed your NMLS test. All you need to do to get started is you need to form a business entity, some type of, it could be a partnership, an S corp, a sole proprietorship. You need to form a business entity. You need to pull your state's checklist from the website, and you need to start gathering everything on the checklist. That's the hard part, is because every state is different with what they have on their checklist. And then you need to submit the items on their checklist and an application form that they have. It's digital. And you need to submit that to the state for approval. There are some states that are pretty quick, and there are some states, only a handful that can take 6 months to a year. So if you live in New York, Nevada, Washington State, some of those states are a little bit more difficult. And the areas that people struggle when they're going through this first part is if you've never seen some of the items on the checklist. This is an image of we have a startup checklist in our course that's pretty darn thorough, of where to get things, templates to use. And there are also licensing companies that will help walk you through. They'll submit it for you. You still, when you're starting, have to do a lot of the work yourself. It's personal financial statements. Sometimes it's putting a business plan together, pro formas. If you're going to see one here, if you're not sure what that means. Another question I get is, how much capital, how much money do I need to start a mortgage brokerage? And the answer to that question varies based on the type of mortgage brokerage that you're opening, because all mortgage brokerages are mortgage brokerages. But the difference is, are you doing this? Like, are you starting and it's just you're a single loan officer doing this? Are you gonna buy a building like I did here? Did you have people who were with you? Because when you start locking loans, they're not going to close for, say, 30, 60, 90 days, but you're going to have people's salaries. But so you do need to put a budget together, and you do need to estimate how much you're going to spend, but you can really impact how different that number can be. And like I said, I'm going to pull this up for you to show you. I have a template that we use in our course and with the brokers that we work with. Also, each state is different. If you want to just know how much does it cost, on that same checklist that I was talking about on the NMLS website, it states each state's fees. So I think one of the lowest states is like a total of around $500 to some of the more expensive states can be a couple $1,000s for the state licensing. And then, like any other business, you have to add up all your other expenses to figure out, here's how much I'm going to set aside and use as I open up this business. All right. So I'm going to pull that up right now, and I have it on the same screen. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys. So this is one of our templates. It's the Excel version that we have, and it's just a startup budget. And what it does is it goes through things like, okay, the least expensive here in column C to the more expensive stuff. So as an example, if you are buying a building and have to do what's called leasehold improvements, which means you have to change things in the building, you're going to need more money than if you go to a Regis and just do what's it called, the temporary workspaces, or if you do a sublease in somebody else's office. Do you need furniture, or does it already have furniture? Computers, laptops, your screens, how many are you going to need? You don't really need a phone system anymore, but even getting, like, if you're going to do Ring Central, your licensing and all that. So it starts adding up, and it just really, really depends on the things you choose and what you pick. And so at the bottom here, you can kind of see, all right, like on the lower end here, okay, 15, maybe 20,000, if it's just you and you're picking very simple things, all the way up to somebody who has a whole team, like I did when I opened one of my last few brokerages, to where, we needed to really have about $100,000 because we had salaries and a building, and, we needed to put extra money set aside when we did this, and we're licensed in 9 or 10 states. So hopefully that helps understand a little bit more. So it's really putting your budget together. Now, next piece of this, which I had at the end, but I figured we're doing the money piece, so let's just keep going with it. So how much money, I missed it, making money as a broker. So is being a mortgage broker really as profitable as working in retail or for a brokerage? And that also is a loaded question. It's kind of like, the way I like to think of it is, you can have two people who take home $100,000, but their 401k accounts, the investments, what they do with their money could look very different. It's a money management thing, and it's an understanding financials thing. It's also a learning piece. We've owned our brokerages now for the last 10 years, and we are much more profitable this year in this market than we were closing a ton of loans with just a support team, because we've learned who is the best credit reporting agency by, comparing over the years. And we have learned we don't need this. We didn't know back 10 years ago that you could use contract processing over having an in-house processing team, or we didn't think it would be smart to do that. So it's all about the decisions you make. I'll pull that spreadsheet up again, but once again, what type of team, what types of expenses, what types of tools. So, will you have employees? Here we go, buying buildings. So that was for the other one. So here's kind of the profitability piece. I think loan officers who work at mortgage brokerages make great money. We really do. We have a career, and we have a way to make excellent money as employees. And so, if you're not at a point yet where you're closing consistently, that's one of the things, consistently, or you're not good at budgeting money, then for someone in that position, I would say you want to wait. You want to wait until, when I did it, well, when I got thrown out, I was every single month closing 10 to 15 loans. Now, if I didn't have two people walk out with me, I probably could have done it. And we have a podcast. It's we don't have any new episodes, but it's called It's called Collab. We're going to send you guys an email after this webinar, and we'll make sure there's a link in there. We interviewed 3 different mortgage brokers, from a solo broker owner to somebody with a team, and then somebody who is building a bigger company. And you can kind of hear their perspectives on, we did talk about money in them, because you can be a solo broker owner and still make more money than where you were, but it's based on your habits. If you decide to do it yourself, if you don't get help, if you don't get, a consulting, coaching, take a course, go into a model that helps you, it will take you longer, and that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but you will make mistakes. You will waste money, and you will spend a heck of a lot longer doing it. So that's a personal preference. We didn't have the options when we did it. And there's one last little story I'm going to tell you at the end about the model that, one of the models we created. We created a couple models for loan officers that we'll share with you at the end. And we have a new model where we help loan officers, and they're part of our bigger community. They own their own brokerage, but they are able to use our resources, and they get to step into having a brokerage where their CRM's built out. It costs a fraction for them. They already have marketing material. There's a sales training every month. So there's a price to that on the front, but looking at what is the price up front to the long-term cost is a big part of running a business. One of the biggest savings that nobody ever talks about is, as a business owner, the savings that you can integrate into owning your business. It's one of the things that I'm really good at and I'm passionate about, is really learning and understanding how to use a business the right way. But I did put a note here on the right here on the slide. I said, done correctly, we have figured out you can make roughly, let's call it 25 to 50 basis points in profit. So that means if you structure your brokerage correctly, you can take your loan officer compensation, let's just call it 125 basis points, like a normal middle of the road compensation. And then as the owner of the company, if you set it up correctly, somewhere between 25 to 50 basis points also you can make in profit. And I kind of broke that down here, meaning, all right, if you're an LO and you are closing 12 million, that means at 1.25, you're going to make about 150,000 in your loan officer compensation for originating. And then if you own that brokerage, and let's say the brokerage does 20 million, so you and maybe 1 or 2 other loan officers, then you're also going to have profit from the volume that the company does. But that's if you can figure out the profitability piece quickly. That took us a while, but we've gotten there, and we now can move levers, and we know how to do things the right way to really make that profitability part of what we do. So let's go back to our little sheet here. So one of the things that we do when we help someone is we go through and we plug numbers in for, what's your average sale price? Because that affects it. So we plug numbers in with how many loans do you do? So if somebody does 25 million, let's say 100 loans, and they are locking their loans, they're bringing in about 260 basis points when they lock. And I'm keeping it super simple here. How many states are they licensed in? Just one state. They pay themselves 1.25. And I go through here and they have one support person that they're paying a salary for. And we put all the different types of expenses in this sheet. So it changes by person. But if you go here this is one of our models. If you go, it plugs all these numbers in and averages it. But what it's going to tell you here is, if you're closing about 25 million in our model that we teach people, you're going to have your income as a loan officer from that 25 million, and you're going to have your profit at the bottom. And then these numbers can change based on the decisions you make and what you spend. So yes, you can be just as profitable, if not more profitable, if you do it the right way. So I hope that answers some of your questions on profitability, The hard parts are when you have to lock a loan for less than the 2.6, right? Those are the types of decisions too that affect your profitability. Running a mortgage brokerage. So running a mortgage brokerage consists of 3 core areas. And those areas are operations, so running your company, things like licensing and compliance, human resources, then processing. So when the loans go into, once you originate, you lock a loan and you put it into the pipeline and it gets into the processing part. That's a third part if you're doing internal processing. And then sales. So we all know the sales piece. We know this middle piece. That's what we're comfortable with. And even processing, most of us, I would say, feel pretty comfortable about what happens, how we can do it. It's the operations section that I think really gets everybody's feathers ruffled, right? And so that's why I would highly recommend for anyone starting, definitely use contract processing. And there are different ways that can be set up from, you can find a contract processing company. If you have a processor, you can help them set it up themselves. Couple different ways, but having it removed helps you with profitability. And it also removes off your plate the need to train people and hire people on the processing side. So now you're down to sales and operations. So let's dig a little further into operations. So how we teach it in the course that we created and to the owners that work with us is we use this little wheel here. And this is how we manage the business is you break your business up into these categories. And so you'll see here, licensing and compliance is a category, finances is a category, vendors and lenders is a category. So they're all different categories. The pipeline, business development, like how you're growing, what you're doing, sales activity, human resources, and marketing. So those are all categories. And each category is going to have like key functions that you have to do as a business. I'm going to break down one of them for you when we jump in here. And so those categories we break down, and our teams, our operations teams know all the things that need to happen on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. And so, we have checklists that our operations team members do. So, here's some examples I wrote down. Doing every month, getting your financials and making sure and reviewing them. Compliance checklists. So you have to make sure you have mortgage call reports, but there's also other things that you have to do with compliance. It's not that hard and it's not that time consuming if you plug right into a system and you know what you have to do. It's the figuring it out that's the hard part. If you've got people who are with you doing trainings or team meetings, submitting payroll, once loans close, you have to make sure they're ready for an audit. I'm going to show you a picture. Oh, I put it down further. When I got picked for my first audit, onboarding new employees, doing bank signups. Those are kind of some key things that you do as operations. What I will say is I was a pretty active originator. I drove the revenue into my company. For the first 7-8 years of owning my business, I didn't do any of this. I hired other people to do this work for me. It wasn't until the last handful of years that I started getting very involved in it because I knew we needed systems. Those people didn't set up the systems we needed. So you don't have to do it yourself if you're on here and you're like, okay, I originate, I won't have time to do that. That's okay. There's solutions for that. And there's a solution that we actually came up with that I'm going to share with you for a minute. Because we saw this as one of the biggest barriers for people. And we wanted to create a solution to help remove that barrier so more people could build their legacies and not have the fear of those things they knew they couldn't make time for. So here's some, human resources, making sure you have the hiring paperwork for people to fill out when they come on. Our compliance, for example, every loan that closes, we have a compliance closing checklist that someone goes in and makes sure that all these documents, these things from the lender are in there. So if it gets picked for an audit, we are all set. And then for compliance, we have a company checklist. It's 2 pages here because even after going through, we've been through 8 or 9 audits now. Nobody tells you, even companies you hire, they'll give you your manuals. You'll download your manuals. You won't have to go and Google them and cut and paste them like I did during my first audit. But nobody gives you like this systematic way of looking at your compliance monthly when you're a broker. I'm sure they do it for the bigger banks because they're more scrutinized. But as a broker, we're small potatoes. We're small business owners in our community. So that was something we ended up creating for other brokers, was so they had these checklists. And they walked right into their brokerage knowing exactly what they needed to do and have. So here's one of those impact areas I was talking about, one of that wheel of items from a brokerage. So this is a step further. What we do is we go through each area. So in licensing and compliance, as an example, okay, what are the key responsibilities that you have as a broker owner? So you've got licensing maintenance is one thing. So making sure that your originators, your loan officers are going into their NMLS accounts and they're doing the things that are required of us in NMLS. You've got your company compliance, so ensuring your company has a compliance plan, a compliance officer, that there's an independent reviewer looking at a file, at least a couple of files at every quarter. There's post-closing. I was talking about that, and making sure that you're going through those closed files. Then there's your education requirements, like, there's a wrong wording there, but your continuing education. So making sure that's done on time. And then also there's compliance continuing education that you have to do. We didn't know that until one of our audits about 2 years ago. So we had missed that for a couple of years. And that's where my point is, you don't have to, this is not about doing things perfectly. It's about starting and doing them and getting better, or making sure you go into a system that will help you do it from the beginning the right way. But that is what one of these areas would look like. And it's about managing all, I think there's 8 total areas that we use. Somebody else might have something a little different. Here's a picture of in 2014, when I got picked for my first audit. We were not digital at the time. Every file was a paper file. Holy crap. We had to go through hundreds of files because they want a list of your closed loans, and then they randomly pick the files they're going to look at. So back then, we literally sat there for, 10 days and nights going through every single folder because we didn't know we should have been doing this. And it's still something I hear some brokers struggle with. You have to make sure someone is doing that. All right, another big question a lot of people have is, how do I establish relationships with lenders as a mortgage broker? And that piece is actually surprisingly pretty easy. Wholesale lenders are looking for strong mortgage broker relationships. The tricky part is, out of the 200 wholesale lenders, picking the right ones for you. And I know that there's some people that will maybe use 2 lenders and that's all they use. And if that's the way that you choose to run your brokerage, that's fine. I've always felt as a broker, the advantage is in having multiple lenders and using that, because if you utilize lenders correctly, you'll close more loans because of it. One of our loan officers, one of our leaders on our management team, he came over from retail in the beginning of this year. He's having the best year he has ever had. And the biggest part for him is the amount of options, and not just product options, but overlays. Like, one lender won't go over a certain debt ratio, but DU still approves it. But another lender doesn't have any overlays. One underwriter might not like something. It's not done as a broker. You can go to a different lender. So establishing the relationships is reaching out, filling out what's called a broker package. I wouldn't recommend filling out and doing literally 20 in your first year or two. I would start with 2 or 3, then add another 1 or 2, because you want the lenders that you're picking, you want to close your loans on time so you keep getting business. For the brokers in our network, they get to work with the banks, and we introduce them to the account executives. So if you have never worked on the broker side, account executives are like the go-between to their operations, and they don't get paid. they're just like us. They don't get paid unless the loan closes. So they're there to help you. And they're one of the best resources when you become a mortgage broker. You can ask in Facebook groups. You can go and interview wholesale lenders. It can be time consuming, but you can go interview some. And really, it's about getting guidance from veteran mortgage brokers. Is how you're going to really build out a strong mortgage broker wholesale lender network. Let's see. Technology, software, vendors. Which one should you use to manage your business as a broker? This is a tricky one. This is, definitely one of the more challenging things is the choices. And I will say that when my brokerages started, I automatically just did and used what I had at my original brokerage that I worked at for 8 years, which was a comfort thing, which I think is what all of us do. But it wasn't the best for the company because I found out as I went through that, the loan system we used was old and antiquated, and the credit company we used was expensive. And it took me time to figure that out, but I definitely could have made a lot more money in those 2-3 years if I had understood what, was available to us. There is phenomenal technology now in the broker space. From what I'm being told from people who have switched over just in the last few years, it's more advanced than they're seeing in the retail space. And a lot of it's about pooling your resources from, our people go into one system. We have one loan system, connects to our CRM. Our loan system does doc requests, prices the loans. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's absolutely, it runs dual AUS. So making sure you're plugging into those systems is important. But it did take us a while to figure out how to get down to a primary one system. And we do still have one or two that we use on the side for certain things. But when it comes to our loan originators, they're mainly in one place, which is great. The harder part, I would say, about learning and managing your brokerage when it comes to not technology, but more like vendors, is if you're going to have a team, if you're going to have loan officers, operations, learning human resources was a challenge. Because none of us know this, right? Like, what kind of health insurance do you pick? Because yes, you can have health insurance as a mortgage broker. I've had it always. You have to have at least 2 people, and at least one of them has to opt in to receiving the health insurance, but you can pick it. And it, for years we spent way too much because I didn't know what I know now. And in 1 year, I started saving our company $50,000 by understanding how to utilize different things in HR, how to set it up correctly, still protect our people, but have a strong, as a small mortgage brokerage, we have health insurance, dental, vision, we have long-term disability, we have a life insurance policy, we have a I'm going to say it wrong. If it's a cafeteria plan, we have a dependent care plan. So stuff is pre-tax. So you can have the same types of benefits you can find at larger lenders. And it's just learning how to read that stuff, who to go to, what to pick. Next question that I've been asked quite a bit is, what types of loans and mortgage products can I offer as a mortgage broker? Once again, this is where control comes in. I hear a lot of people say, oh, you lose control of the loans when you become a mortgage broker. That is not the case. I think you actually have more control. You have control of choice. You get to choose. You don't have to wait to see if a product's made available. You just go look for it. So, non-QM, I'm sure everyone, is aware, but there's different types of non-QM. I mean, we've got lenders who do, investor cash flow loans, and some of them will go below a certain DSCR level and some of them won't. So you can go sign up with those lenders. If you want to do I-10 loans, there's other lenders. You want to open up a commercial division, you can do that. The options are endless. Not to say that it should be a strategy, because niching is very effective, but you have the ability to really niche into whichever thing you want. What kind of support and resources are available to mortgage brokers starting their own business? So there's definitely a lot more than there were even 5 years ago. When we went over, we tried retail for a year in between. It was in 2018. There weren't the Facebook groups, there weren't organizations. We came back in 2019, and now there was, I put on here, AIM, which is the Association of Independent Mortgage Experts, which they only allow brokers in. I think their community is about 50 or 60,000. That's one of the organizations that we are on their boards. There are companies that will help. I had mentioned a licensing company. There are some licensing, some compliance companies. What I will say is there's never been like an all-in-one that helps. It's just there's kind of piece. So bringing it all together, I think, can be the tricky part, and which is where some of the solutions we came up with is a place to go and get help in one place, which helps all of us. We created a course. As of right now, it is the first course that's specific to mortgage brokers, opening a mortgage brokerage, running a mortgage brokerage. There's some amazing coaching programs. Coaching changed my career. When I started growing my business, it was because I got to spend the company's money doing coaching. Coaching changed my career. It was worth the $2,000 a month because my business grew. These coaching programs are phenomenal. They're for growing your sales, but there really isn't any programs out there yet that is specific to helping and coaching mortgage brokers. The loan process, very similar to what you do if you're in retail or a bank, but there are some differences. Mortgage brokers, closing loans, you have control. You pick your bank. You can talk to underwriters. You have your account executives. It's all about the choices you make and how you put your process together. You will have to create all these things you're seeing. We've created ourselves. You'll have to create your own. This is just a piece of our loan process checklist. You have the same things. You get a conditional approval letter. You have to work through it with the underwriter. So creating these assets is what really helps, especially as you bring people on to have them. But the loan process, we can close loans. We've done some in 14, 15 days. I think our average is like 31, 32 days. So, doing a loan is nice and smooth. And from what I'm being told, even faster than in a lot of the other areas. So what are some of the potential challenges, pitfalls that you should be aware of as a mortgage broker? So just like I was saying, you have control, you have the ability to make choices. Well, success or failure then lies in your hands. And sometimes you have to make some really hard decisions on pay, on compensation, when to hire someone, when to let someone go. So you have the ability to make these choices, but they're not always easy choices. But how I always say it is I would rather make a bad decision, but have the freedom to make that bad decision. I can live with that. Than make a good decision that wasn't my decision to make in the first place, or not have the ability to even have an impact on a decision that's being made. And I think it's why I feel like I had such an emotional roller coaster my first 8 years in the business. But then after that, it wasn't that emotional for me because I felt in control. I felt like I had a hand in what my career and what my business was doing. You could make a wrong choice with vendors, picking a lender that maybe you really shouldn't be working with. They don't have a good process. Probably one of the things that you'll spend the most on if you do it yourself, if you choose to DIY it, is you will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on wrong vendors. One day we sat there and added up how much we had spent on things we no longer used that didn't work during a 3 or 4 year period. And it was close to, I think, 400,000. And it was one of the reasons we started creating some of the stuff we did, because we're like, gosh, every year, the story of the model I'm going to show you here, every year for the first 10 years, I'd get to vacation. I'm going next week with my family, and I'd get there and I'd be crying about something. I'd be upset. And my dad owned a business, and I would tell him what was going on. And he would tell me, hey, you need to call your brother, and who owns a bit. Both my brothers own businesses. And he's like, you need to call your brother. And I'd always be like, screw him. I'm not talking to my brother, like, whatever. so what if he's got 7 weeks of vacation and he doesn't deal with this? And this happened for years. Well, this was 2 years ago when we started creating all our processes. We have a management team. I mean, just things are running so smoothly. We're making good money. I get to vacation, and it was when someone had suggested to us to take our course and put it into a model for other loan officers. And it was a franchise model, and I didn't really understand what a franchise was. And I'm like McDonald's? They're like, no, you're consulting people. They get to own the business, but you're giving them everything. And I remember, because it was that year I went on vacation 3 years ago, that like I wasn't crying, I wasn't upset, things were great. And I sat there thinking, because I had just been introduced to this idea, and I'm like, my brother owns a state farm agency. It's a franchise. I get it. He got to start and he got to open his business with everything in place. That's why he never experienced a lot of the hardships that I faced in business. And there's only one out there at the time. And, so yes, there's models where you can be a branch, but there really weren't any models that allowed you to own and have control. And we're going to talk about what is control in the mortgage industry. And nobody ever talks about the tax savings when you own a business. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So if you'd rather skip the learning curve and save time and money, there are some resources that you can plug into. The ones that we've created, I don't know all of them out there, but we do share a ton of them. We have a free community that you are welcome to come be a part of. We'd love to have anyone in there. And then we have our course is now the lab community. We have our collab new broker model that you'll see, and then broker concierge. So I'll just explain what those things are. And first of all, I think I skipped the slide. These different resources do a variety of things, from just literally giving you all these templates you see, to having an operational person help you with back-end stuff in your company. But there's going to be a number of you guys who are in your email. You are going to get part of our course, the licensing, the startup part. If you haven't started yet, you're going to get that for free. You're going to get access to it. So the first thing we ever built back to a year or 2 years ago, we built our mortgage broker fast track course. And I mean, it is so chock full of information. It has a startup checklist. It goes through filing your LLC, who you can reach out to for help. We give you samples of all the things that are on the checklist so you can see what they look like. So the first 10 people who signed up for the webinar, you're going to get access to this course for free. We normally are selling this course for around $1,000. So it's a huge, huge benefit. It does not have all 6, though there's a total of 6 courses. This is the first one. So this is the getting started one. Our course was a standalone course because we've been originating. We didn't have time to mentor, to coach. That is changing. We now have a community called the Lab, and that's where the course sits. So, if you're on the fence, you're not sure what you're doing, come into our free community, and then you can always check out the Lab and the course and the help that's in there. It has so much stuff. I actually thought about scaling it back. Like, for example, we talked about how we manage our business with our impact areas. There's a workbook that comes with every course, and it has you walk through and do your own work, because we can show you things, tell you things, but you need to have some involvement in making some of these decisions with how you want things to be structured and run. You can see on the right, we have a whole course on picking your lenders, your loan processors, your loan process, hiring loan officers. So this is all part of now the Lab, which is our community. And like I said, the 10 people who signed up first are going to be getting this module of the course for free. So make sure you stay till the end. Now, we thought the course was going to be the only thing that we were going to do. But that was when someone approached us and said, hey, like, you have this passion for helping loan officers and real estate agents who are trying to open their own companies. Have you ever thought about creating a model where people can be part of your collab company, but they get to own themselves? And that was that whole journey we took. So we do have a mortgage broker model now that is like a franchise model. It is a franchise, and there's a lot of misconceptions around that. So I wanted to make sure I explain this. With a franchise model, you have to do it this way because of our licensing. Do you own the brokerage? Yes, you own 100% of the company. What's the name? Your choice, whatever it is, in partnership with collab lending. What kind of support do you get? Everything. Like everything you've seen on this screen is like a drop of what you get. Everything. And you get people who walk you through. It has a help desk. If it's something you're interested in, please schedule a discovery call. It depends on the size of your company, your team, what you're looking to do, how much the cost is. But what I can say is it's like the cost of coaching. So, we made it so it was super affordable, and you plugged right into having your CRM set up. You got to have your LOs use our sales training. I mean, everything, our marketing templates, our drip emails. It just makes it so that you can step into being profitable and not having to make those mistakes and spend all the time that we had to do this stuff. Sorry, guys. Right here. I want to make sure I explain this because this is one of the most confusing things for our industry. What is control in the mortgage industry? Because there's a lot of models out there that say, hey, it's like you own your own company, right? Like some of the companies that do net branches, and there's nothing wrong with those models, but there needs to be some clarity here. In our industry, control lies in your license. You have to be the one who controls your license to own your business. If your license is held by anybody else, you don't own your business. You cannot sell a business that you do not own. So you have to be the one that holds your license. And it looks different in NMLS. On the right side, this is a company that they all share the same name, but there are individual owners in different towns, states, all over the country. So each individual owner is one of those boxes in NMLS. On the left side is a bank that does net branches. Net branches all go under the main company, and they're listed out because the people under the list can name it themselves. A lot of people think DBAs mean, oh, I own it. You do not own it. If the parent company was to go under, it's to go under, you would be closed down until you could get a company up and running, however long that takes in your state. That is a pivotal piece of understanding what you're doing in this and, how you want your business to look when you're exiting or over the next 10 years or the decisions that you make. And then the last piece I had mentioned when we talked about, hey, mortgage brokerage has these three parts: processing, sales, operations. So use contract processing to take that off your plate. There's never been anything to help take operations off your plate. So what we did is brand new. We opened what's called Mortgage Broker Concierge service, where if you are a mortgage broker owner or you're opening a brokerage, and this could be super helpful if you are currently working at a retail company and you want to open your brokerage, but you're like, I'm not going to have the time to do all this. You can pay our consulting division, Mortgage Broker Concierge, to do all the legwork for you and until it's open. And then all you have to do is get your license switched. And then after you're open, Mortgage Broker Concierge, I have a slide here that shows you. We're almost done. Lost my place. So Mortgage Broker Concierge does stuff like for licensing and compliance. We have a package we've negotiated with a couple companies, so you don't have to go paying here and there and that. So we do audit prep for you, like you have an operations person who handles this stuff. We make sure that you have your continuing education done, new loan officer sponsorship coordination. We have under the financial section, we have a CEO dashboard you get every month that we put together. Your concierge crew member is the one who puts this together. I mean, it's like having a person, but not having to hire a person. They do closing tracking. They help do loan officer commission calculations. So our support team becomes your support team with our concierge service. You can use that if you're part of our partnership network, or you can be an independent broker and also use this. We also have, like, if you jump into our free community, we have some boot camps, we have templates, playbooks, there's some consulting packages. If you already have a business set up, but you just need help in this one area, it's just some things we've been putting together to help mortgage brokers continue to keep control in their hands. And so the roadmaps, the startup guides, the compliance guides, the introduction to the vetted vendors, ongoing training and mentoring. We just brought on a mortgage coach who is phenomenal. We've got someone who coaches people all over the country who is part of our collab network. So it's really exciting. And so every month, and actually every week, there's accountability for loan officers to help them succeed. Take that off your plate. Here's like an example. These are like our milestone emails that go out of the system. You get all of this depending which of our different products. Like I said, it's too much. That wasn't the point of today's webinar. So if any of these things sound like something that you want to be a part of, would like help with, schedule a discovery call. I have a QR code here. Our free, at least jump into our free community. The whole point of it is making life and business a little less chaotic, a bit more profitable, and a heck of a lot more fulfilling, so that you're not doing this alone. It can be lonely as a business owner, but it doesn't have to be. And so our course, our Mortgage Broker Fast Track course, we normally sell that for, it was $2,500 has been our sale price for it. We just upgraded it. So it's a community now where you have all the course material, but you also get weekly deep dive coaching with Q&As. There are guest experts that are coming in that we've had throughout our career who have been instrumental in a lot of the things you learned today. They will be coming in. You'll get resources for running a brokerage in there, and you'll be around other people who are going through and doing the same things. One of the most surprising things for me, I thought when we started creating all of this stuff, was it would be a lot of new people who were opening their brokerage, which we definitely have that. But the amount of people who are 1 to 2 years into owning a brokerage who are still looking for help, that's what surprised me. And it's continued to validate that we need more of this stuff for any of you looking to open your own business, because you can be just as profitable, just as efficient as any other organization. You just need these resources and tools. So, and we're doing that on a monthly basis. You can still pay just the $2,500, but we're doing it monthly instead. If you'd rather jump into our, not the free one, but if you want to jump into our paid program where we're walking through all of the impact areas and getting all of those resources, that's the $275 a month. So here's the QR code if you would like to schedule a discovery call to talk about any of the products. Please, anybody, please jump into the free group. We'll be sending that email out here later today, and make sure that you do jump in there, and then you can see what we have going on. Maybe you need this, but not that. So schedule a discovery call if you want to talk about Broker Concierge, our franchise model, any of those things. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. Just take action. That's my one big thing. If I have one regret looking back over the years, is when I kind of hit situations when I was left out after having my who's coming with me moment, or having to leave my business partner. If I had just started an LLC, even if I wasn't planning on opening, if I had just done certain things, I would have put myself in such a better position. You don't have to make those same mistakes. So jump in the free community so you get those tips and you start making progress towards what you want the most. Just take action. So thank you for attending today, for coming, for listening. If you have any questions, I'm going to stick around in here for about 5-10 minutes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I got to figure out where they are, but once I can figure out where they are, if you have any, happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week, guys. All right, let's see. See if my team can tell me questions. Anyone have questions? Eric, maybe you can tell me.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you can just drop them in the chat.
Thank you. I didn't tell them where they could put their questions. I'm pulling that up. Yes, I can. We can do the QR code via email. We will put that in the email for sure. And then there was a question too about, if I'm reading this right, is the lab, the community, the same as the community is the same as the course? Yes, it's the same base material. The community has more though, because it has the weekly coaching, the weekly Q&As. It has, we call them deep dives. It has the other brokers in there, but you get the same resources as the original course had, but we're also continuing to add things now. So we have all this stuff we've added. We tried launching, like doing an official launch, and it's just been such an interesting process. There's so many people coming over into the broker channel and needing this help, and figuring out what each person needs. So making sure that we're available to everyone on a weekly basis. And if you need one-on-one coaching, you can choose to do that. You can choose to pay for that, but it doesn't, you don't have to, like when I did coaching, it was, I think it was like 2,000. Then it went up, it was like $2,500 a month for coaching in the community, which was worth it, right? We wanted to make this more affordable because it's expensive when you're starting your company. It's scary, but it will save you so much money in the long run. So yes, the course is in that community. I gotta take a drink here when I talk like this. All right, I don't see any other ones, so I will stick around for about a minute, but otherwise, thank you so much, guys. Good luck with all your, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. Keep taking action, and I look forward to seeing you guys or meeting you if you jump in the free or the lab group for loan officers. We're going to be starting a career planning. We call it our Power Up 90 Day. We're going to be starting that here soon. So we'll have information in the free community for that. All right. Let me see if I can figure out how to log off now.